Ooh, I have to see, perfect, okay. All right, sounds good. Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm the first one here,
Yes.
huh? Wow,
Yeah, we're gonna be down here.
down here for you.
I'm the second one here.
I mean, Mayor's not coming, he's going to a graduation seminary, I think.
Well, it takes a lot of nerve, but it was graduation.
I've been to several already.
My wife told me,
Are you just like done with graduations?
I hope to go on tonight, well, if with junior high school, and so it's not a big deal.
Oh, I know, there you go.
I had a grandson that got he's still in high school, but he got his certificate from Weaver, a 2-year certificate, associate degree from Weaver State. You had to go to that one.
Oh, my
And then
God.
last Friday, I went to his graduation from that school called New Ames, the charter school.
Oh,
It's for science, engineering, and math.
oh, my.
I didn't go to that one. Yeah, kids that want to focus on that specifically, go to that charter school.
That would be. Okay.
Well, 90% of them get a full ride scholarship somewhere. He got a full ride to the University of Utah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hello, sir.
Hey,
How are you?
hey, we're just hanging, how about you?
We're down here for a while.
So why not later to this year?
I know, like, what?
Hey, see,
"Hey, how are you, buddy?"
great deal.
Good. We go over, I'll look that for. Lifetime, you dedicated to FFA, huh? That's cool. Got a son-in-law that has a whole bunch of belt buckles.
Ah,
Flag.
Yeah.
well, that feels good to sit down for a minute. That's good.
He's married to my daughter.
I didn't think, I remember that.
Natalie.
Yeah, I know the question, I didn't, we should get on it. Okay. No, I know.
Yeah. That just put 2 and 2 together, man. Yeah, she just had gallbladder out there, but she's kind of sore.
Doesn't go down.
Every one of my kids had the gallbladder.
Really?
And me and Lana, we haven't. But every one of my kids.
I'm missing mine.
Are you?
I have mine now too.
Not very much.
Well, I wonder if it's,
Apparently not, but
you think it's diet or?
I don't know, I get a little pain right here, you know? I did an ultrasound, it says, you got stones there, you got gallstones. Well, what should we do? Anybody thinking about a nanosecond, we're gonna go take your gallbladder out. Oh, okay.
Did they just do yours orthopedically with 3 little holes?
Mhm. Yep.
It's my man now.
How are you? Better than I hear.
It'll be a short meeting if you don't pick up another member.
One wanted to see my name was.
That marquee says it's 88 degrees outside.
That marquee is wrong.
That's like that one. Probably get the sunshine.
That's in bed and.
Okay.
My, that's not it.
I'm going. Tony, how are you? What's that?
88 or Phoenix.
Out of the flying man into the fire.
Right? I'm right in the state of overwhelm. There's kind of a lot.
I still go online and watch the 7th ward.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
Well,
I keep tracking.
can take the man out of the 7th ward, but can't take the 7th ward out of the man.
Good to hear.
Tried out that new walking path, yes.
Nice. Looks
Yeah.
really nice.
Really nice. I
Where
walked
is
on
it?
the other day.
Across.
So now you can go from the end of Commercial Street over to the new bridge.
Oh,
You could also go from the bridge over to Fairgrounds.
oh, sweet. I haven't done that
Phase,
yet.
phase three is underneath it,
Okay.
Phase three,
Cool.
one.
underneath the bridge.
Oh, where does the path go now?
The end of Commercial Street,
Yes,
over, it hooks onto the new bridge.
okay.
So you could walk
Is it
down
paved?
Commercial Street all the way over to the new
Nice.
bridge on either sidewalk or a trail. And then it goes from the bridge up to the fairgrounds.
That's great.
And no, another trail, a paved trail.
Okay.
And I parked there by the tennis courts and walked all the way around.
Well,
That's Commercial Street around.
the big plan is eventually it would take you all the way to the pickleball court. But that's the county portion there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the set. City doesn't own that property.
That's nice.
What, you use it, the bridges, in the middle for a while.
Pardon?
Yeah, it does.
You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
it does. Yeah,
you come over the bridge and turn right and go out.
Well, supposedly, Ty thought, we haven't got notice yet, but he thought we got. Or we'd been approved for the grant to do that under, the under river
Great.
he
thing.
told us that too the other night.
But we hadn't got a notice of it, but
It says, that it's not, all we did was get a notification that it looks like you're gonna be.
yeah,
It's
that's,
not like saying, yeah, we're gonna give it to you, but we're not giving it to you.
Got my lips.
which is fine, cause the river's gotta go down about 3 feet before we can do anything.
It's been a little difficult
He
like
has
that.
to board it. I don't.
Well,
I
that's,
got thinking about
that's
it.
it right now, the water would be above
Yeah.
where it is, so it really is
Oh.
only something
I
that'll
got
be
thinking about it.
partially year
Are we
used.
gonna have any liability there when we have a path underneath that bridge? And
There'll be warning signs and gates that'll go up when the water's on it, but
Does it have to be?
Yeah, yeah.
They didn't come again, did you send it?
No, yeah, onward and upward.
It was sent back.
People, that's nice.
Yeah, it does. Have you been in there?
Yeah.
It looks really nice. They did a great job with it.
Yeah, it looks- that was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful in there. It's really nice. And they're gonna have their big Front Street Festival on the first, so that'd be a good chance to show it off.
Onward and upward.
Yep. I know Lance is excited about that. Love closing the street down.
Yeah.
So how is,
Like Lance said, we could do it now if we wanted.
what's the trail gonna be? Like asphalt?
The new
no, it's gonna be, it's gonna be concrete.
And that's gonna be okay under the river?
Well, that's why it's designed in concrete, it'll be retained.
Okay,
When the river's high, it will actually be underwater,
okay.
Be under the bridge.
but the long.
But it won't erode out.
Long-term goal for it is,
Apologize.
long-term goal for it is to be someday when we can get rid of the diversions by the fairgrounds and, the idea is that eventually those diversions will go into the irrigation ditch. Instead of having a dam across the river to back up the irrigation, they actually build another channel in the river
Oh,
to catch the water, run it for the irrigation. And that way, when you get high water, you don't have to worry about a dam across the river.
yeah.
So the idea is someday, at some point, hopefully, we can get rid of them diversions and you would be able to walk.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started with our working session.
Get out there.
For those online, hopefully you can hear us. I see a thumbs up. Good. Sorry, we're running just a little bit behind getting kicked off, but we are here and have a quorum and ready to roll. So thank you. We had a change to our agenda. Just want to make sure everyone saw that we will not be covering the preliminary discussion of the Valley Vista Estates. We are, I just want to be clear with the final approval. Is this a final approval? It says final discussion and review, but are we looking for an approval of the Anderton subdivision ultimately?
Yeah.
Okay, and that'll be a recommendation to the city council. So that's really our primary action to take as a body tonight. And then we have the general plan implementation follow-up from our discussion that we've had for the last couple of months. So those are the two things. With respect to the work session, Jake, we didn't pre-align, but did you want to? I was thinking just to quickly spend a minute or two with the Anderton subdivision and then talk through some of the general plan pieces.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I was thinking.
perfect. So everyone had a chance to review the packet. I wanted to be clear. Ultimately, staff's recommendation is to approve, but I want to be clear what's changed. I like to understand the history. Just because we've talked about this subdivision probably for 18 months or thereabouts. And there were some challenges with the pre-existing building, the way that those were set up. And so I want to understand how those are being resolved, because as I understood it, it didn't meet the setbacks. So I don't know if that was, it says it's legally non-conforming, but we didn't have a date of construction for it.
Yeah, that's the existing shed.
The one that's right on the lot line.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
on the lot line. It's an old building. And in the end, I don't think it affects, things a whole lot. But we did ask the applicant they did a lot of research and effort to find, when it was built, and Teresa went back through all the old codes and all of that, and it just wasn't
Okay.
there.
Talking about the barn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right on the property
Long,
line.
skinny barn.
It's like 3 feet where the setback would be 10.
So that to me was one of the things that hung them up initially, in addition to some of the layout that they were thinking.
Yeah, and the road was a big part of that.
Do you want to take us, does anyone else remember any of the previous issues? I just want to make sure we've got those resolved and close the loop there.
Hey, Jake, does the existing building, is it sit on any of the new lots, or is that the original lot?
I don't know. Yeah, we do not know that.
And then that'd beg a second question. If it was on one of the new lots, would that affect financing being non-conforming?
The barn is on one of the new lots.
Oh, it is part of one of the new lots. And that's where that's where our recommendation is, that it's legal non-conforming.
Mm-hmm.
So it's legal because it's been there forever, and it's non-conforming because if they were going to
It
build
doesn't
it new
conform.
today, then it would have to be set back a little.
Yeah, that might cause them a little grief, but probably not a concern for us necessarily.
And it was judged that there was no healthy safety, welfare issues with it.
But as far as being a steward of the ordinance, I guess that's the part I want to be clear on. That doesn't, if it's part of the new lot that's being divided, that doesn't create an issue, even as far as our ordinance is concerned.
No, I mean, it's legal non-conforming. It happens all the time.
Okay.
It's pretty common, I mean, throughout the state, and there's even, plenty of case law for it. Gary, do you have anything you want to add to kind of on that legal non-conforming?
Yeah, normally,
Existing shed?
yeah, it shouldn't adversely affect the subdivision. What it simply means is that the building was built before there was an ordinance that prohibited the building being built there or at that location. And so you should be all right. It can't be added to, it can't be expanded, it can't be, there's very little that they can do with it until the idea with non-conforming uses is that eventually they'll disappear. However, the opposite's pretty much true, and that is that non-conforming uses can last for a long time, but but it shouldn't present any problems with this application.
Okay, so just to help me oh, sorry, Gary, keep going.
No, that's it.
I was just gonna ask, because I want to make sure I'm clear. It's legal and non-conforming, and it's not an issue for us because it's on the boundary line. But let's say that we're in the middle of the property and they were trying to create the subdivision line right next to the shed within the setback range, then that would be, that we wouldn't be able to do that because they're creating something new. It's the fact that it's on the exterior boundary.
Right.
I'm getting a thumbs up. Is that
That's correct.
you'd have to build that into your plan. Yes, okay.
Also, the road was a fair amount of work for staff, with the applicant and their engineers in terms of, so it's going to be a private road. And they'll agree to maintain it. And Gary's gonna take the lead in working with them on, there's a maintenance agreement for that. And then they'll stub off for their two utilities, for their utilities onto their lots. And so it's a private road with a maintenance agreement.
So can I explain a little bit about that?
Please.
So Matt and I talked about this extensively, because, you know, typically a private road would be maintained by a HOA. But HOAs are pretty ineffective when it comes to less than 7 lots. Typically, if they are formed, they always fall apart and nobody really wants to take the lead on it. And so a good substitute for an HOA in small subdivisions, 3-lot subdivisions, is a perpetual maintenance agreement, which grants all of the property owners have ownership in the private road. And there is a shared maintenance agreement that is perpetual and runs with the land that provides that any owner can enforce it. And that would be for the renovation, construction, maintenance of the road, that type of thing. It covers those types of things. Instead of it being forced by an association, it would be enforced by any one of the property owners. They could enforce that agreement. So it's a good substitute for a small subdivision that really can't afford the costs of developing an HOA. In addition, we read the dedication language, which is on the right-hand side of the subdivision screen. And the dedication language covers a dedication of a public easement as well over the road, and satisfies the requirement that we need in order to access utilities in the road. I think there will be a sewer main in that road that we want to make sure that, and we have a responsibility under state law to make sure is maintained. And so in reviewing the language, the dedication language, and also we will review the language of the perpetual maintenance agreement, this subdivision is possible. Does that make sense, or is that?
Yeah, that makes sense. So the burden is solely on the 3 property owners. There's no city involvement with that.
No, but at the same time, the city does have the right to go in if they need to, and state law requires that we take responsibility for a sewer line if it broke. A main would need to be taken and repaired by the entity that actually maintains the sewer system for the city, and that's state law. And so this would provide, the easement would provide us with the capability of doing that. And of course, we would pass the responsibility for the costs of that on to the property owners if that occurred.
I'll go ahead.
Gary, this is Tony. So let's say that just one of those property owners wanted to initiate some improvement done to the surface of that road, like they said, oh, I think we need to overlay it or something like that. can just one of them then cause that to take place? Or does it have to be a majority, or is it just one owner can move that forward on their own?
Yeah, any one owner, that's the advantage of an agreement versus an HOA that usually doesn't exist, like I say. But one owner, yes, one owner can enforce the agreement against the other two.
And the city has no obligation for snow removal or anything like that, correct?
That's correct.
And also with the road, it does access onto State Street, which is a UDOT facility, and our understanding is that they've worked with UDOT to get that, and proof of that will be part of final requirements. They have that, okay.
So is that hammerhead at the end of this road designed for access to the sewer easement, or is that for their own convenience?
For fires?
For fires?
But it also helps with driveways and all that. I mean, it's pretty cool how you could just access to both, but then also fire, and they will have to be signed, no parking at certain points.
The road by ordinance can't be parked on.
Yep.
The private road can't be parked on.
And there, on the final drawings, there'll be a requirement of a 10-foot public utility easement on State Street. And, but it meets the lot sizes, way bigger than it needs to be. The frontage is on State Street, and it meets that, or on the private lane. It meets that. And
Teresa, did this come before Water Advisory Board?
Yes, it's done water advisory. It's got its, will serve letters, UDOT letters, everything.
I can't remember if there was a ditch running through that property or not.
No, there's not. There's a lateral, but no ditch. Yeah.
So just to clarify, you said that you got the paperwork for UDOT's already come in, or is that something that needs to come in next year?
No, that's why this application's been delayed, is they had to get that UDOT done for us to move forward. Took a bulk of the time to do so.
Okay, so depending on what action we take, if we were to move forward with a recommendation to approve, we wouldn't have to put the condition that's dependent on that. Okay.
correct.
So just to clarify, Jake, is there a reason this would go to the city council?
Because we haven't updated the subdivision ordinance yet. Is that?
Yeah, it probably, this would be final approval of the subdivision because state law says that it's final approval, even though we haven't updated the subdivision ordinance to indicate that it doesn't go to the council. It doesn't go to the council because of the state law
Okay.
changed.
And
So,
that's a
clarify that for me. Does that
Yeah.
mean we have authority to approve it outright?
This is the final approval.
Yes.
Okay.
I knew we were going there. I didn't know we were there yet. Yeah, so
That's new, right?
in fact, that's part of our next discussion is
Okay.
updating our subdivision ordinance to meet
Alright.
state law requirements. That's actually top on my list. And as part of that is the state allows, that's a keyword, allows cities to have a public hearing at the planning commission. And then the planning commission is actually who is allowed to approve subdivisions. Subdivision no longer go to city council, and you can do up to one public meeting, and then you have to choose a land use authority to approve your subdivision. I imagine it'll be the planning commission, but some cities could choose, to be staff as well.
Okay. So what would go to the city council then, just
Okay.
changes to the ordinance?
Ordinance, rezones, ordinance updates, rezone, development agreements. Anything you want to clarify with that, Gary?
Annexations still go to the council. No,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good indication. That happened about a year ago, and it was not this last legislative session, but the previous legislative session, they made that change, and we just needed to update our ordinance to make sure that it complies. There is an exception to that, and the exception is for sensitive lands. And sensitive land subdivisions, you do have sensitive lands in the city that those may still go to the city council for final approval.
I apologize. I missed that.
Well, we were a little, the cities who are greater than 5,000 population had to implement it sooner.
Mhm.
So we've just been,
Right.
yeah, we have till December, but the state laws already.
Go ahead, Tom.
Gary, I was gonna talk to you after the meeting about this, but now that it's come up, I'll mention it now. At League of Cities in Town, I sat through a breakout session that dealt with this new law. Do you think it would be wise to maybe do a little bit of training on this as to what this entails? And because it's quite a change, because like you said, it doesn't come to city council anymore. And I am not really clear on that land use authority board and what their role plays in this. So maybe that's something that needs to be talked about.
I agree. And really it's something that we probably need to change an ordinance. And I think the education will come as we change that ordinance to reflect what the state law says. And maybe that's the education process that we should start changing it now. I think that's what Jake's saying, is we need to bring it up to where it needs to be. And then as we do that, we can educate everybody on exactly what it means, because there's timing issues that need to be accounted for. They were delayed for smaller cities. There have been a number of changes that have been made that we're running into deadlines of when our ordinances need to be changed in order to reflect those legislative changes. But I agree. We need an education on it. And, maybe it would be good to. We certainly need to start doing work on it. And if the council and the planning commission would kind of give us the go ahead to start making those changes, I think between Jake and myself and Matt, we can begin working on making those changes in the ordinance. And bring them back to you and educate while we're bringing them back to you.
Did I understand that this land use board is, and maybe I'm not even calling it the right name, but did I understand that it could not have any members of the planning commission serve on that board?
That is correct. I'd have to go back and read the wording, but I believe that is correct.
I kind of gathered that in that breakout session that I attended. So bottom line is I was kind of shocked, and there's a lot of information that was given there that I was not, up to speed on. So
yeah,
a lot of changes.
A lot of changes.
Did we learn maybe what the why was, what the legislature was intending behind this? In other words, is this to reduce the bureaucracy of, does the city council just rubber stamp the recommendations, and so there's no point going through a second body, or what are we trying to accomplish with this? Because what I want to make sure, I don't sit in on the city council meetings. I guess I could, but I don't. And so I'm not sure when we make those recommendations, what type of rigor or due diligence is put on top of what we've already recommended. And I don't want to lose anything in the process or be inconsistent with what the city, what our elected leaders are trying to accomplish.
So may I, Mr. Chairman, address
Yeah,
that?
please.
So this has been a process that has been going on for, I guess, a total of 3 years now. And it's a process where cities work with the state of Utah. State of Utah has put together housing policy and committees and that type of thing to deal specifically with housing. And one of the issues that came to the attention of the legislators was the fact that in subdivisions are administrative decisions. And as administrative decisions, they just simply require application of the law to a set of facts. And because they only require the application of a law to a set of facts, the question came up as to why they go to a legislative body to double check essentially what the Planning Commission does. Planning Commission is the zoning authority for the city, the land use authority for the city. And so the question was, why does it go to the city council afterwards? In looking at a lot of different cases, when it did go to the city council afterwards, there were often public hearings again about a subdivision. Requirements and exactions were imposed that were not authorized under the law. There were a lot of things that were going on that additional things that didn't need to be addressed. But they were being addressed because essentially city councils are political bodies. They're there to listen to whoever comes and talks to them. One of the things that they tried to eliminate completely is any type of hearing on a subdivision, simply because there's really no need. There's a need for a public meeting on subdivisions, but subdivisions are really just the application of the law to whatever application comes in. And so the determination was made that the Planning Commission is the land use authority for the city and ought to be making those final determinations on subdivision approvals. And so and that the city council did not need to be making those. If there was a condition of subdivision approval that was unacceptable, then that would be appealed to what's called the appeal authority. And in Morgan, that would be we have a hearing appeal officer that handles appeals from decisions of the final decisions on administrative determinations by the Planning Commission. And so that's kind of the background, is that these are administrative decisions and city councils deal primarily with legislative decisions. And so that was the reason for the change in the law to there were some extreme examples. There always are, and those are things that drive changes in the law. I think I've talked about one particular case where, because the developer no longer had to build a second access to the subdivision, one of the city council people said, well, why don't you take the money that you're going to spend on the second access and build a park over here? And there's nothing in the ordinance that required that. And it became an issue and went through the ombudsman's office, and it was determined that that was an excessive exaction. So it's those types of things that actually ended up in guiding the wisdom of our legislators in that direction. So I hope that helps, but we really do need to catch our ordinance up. One of the reasons that we've not really done an overhaul is because it's changed every year for the last 3 years, every single year. And the other reason is that smaller cities have not had to make those changes as quickly as the larger cities have. And so, but it's time that we moved that forward.
Hey, Gary.
Yep.
I'm not clear then, zoning changes, is that Planning Commission only or planning and council?
Zone changes are city council.
Okay.
Council, or Planning Commission makes the recommendation, city council makes the final.
Gotcha.
Annexation.
Similar to before.
Annexation is city council.
Right.
Development agreements are really primarily city council because they're contracts with the city.
Yeah.
Is what they are. And, I mean, the planning commission can and should review, development agreements. And I think this year they added a provision that requires that the planning commission looks at those development agreements. But I can't remember. I'm still catching up on what they did to us, but anyway, so we do need to move forward and through that moving forward, Tony, to your point, we need to educate everybody as to what the changes are and how to comply with them.
It's kind of the administrative versus legislative subdivision approval process for the most part is administrative.
That's explained that way.
And then, you know, and the council being the legislative body is making the ordinances and a rezone is a legislative change, general plan adoption, annexation, development agreement, all of those items.
Conditional uses are typically administrative, so once again, those go to the planning commission for their final determination. So.
And part of it is also just so there, I mean, across the whole state, there was every way that you could do it was be done, could be, you know, in terms of just helping the housing situation and making things a little bit common across the board.
Do all cities have the same form of government with a planning commission and a city council?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
to be clear, there are two different types of government in the state of Utah. One is what they call a strong mayor, which Salt Lake City has and Provo has and Logan has, where the duties of the mayor, who is the administrative officer, and the legislative body are separated, entirely separated. And then the remaining and the majority of city councils in the state of Utah are what they call 6-member council, where they are all council members. All 6 of them are council members. The only difference is the mayor is not a voting council member. He's the chair of the council, except in certain situations where they're changing the powers of the mayor and that type, or hiring a city manager, those types of things. And so, but every single one of them, whether it's strong mayor or whether it's 6-member council, have a planning commission. You have to, by state law, have a planning commission, and planning commission handles the administrative determinations that are made in the city.
So if there's a strong mayor, is there a weak mayor?
Well, they call it strong mayor, but yeah, if you take a look at what happens in Salt Lake, a lot of the times, the council and mayor are always butting heads. So
could be, huh?
Yeah. The council holds the purse strings in that form of government, and the mayor tries to work with the council to get the money to do the things that they want to do. It's typically there's 2 separate staffs. The mayor has his or her attorney, administrator, and finance person, and then on the other side, the council has their attorney, their administrator, and we would often see, sometimes we'd see Ogden City, we'd see both the administrator for the mayor and the administrator for the council on different sides of issues in the past. And so it's a rather interesting form of government. Anyway, sorry.
Gary, is it possible to have a strong mayor that's not a full-time position?
No,
No, okay.
no, it's a full-time position.
So just bringing it, but thank you, Gary. That's super helpful. I appreciate the education. Just bringing it back then with the Anderton subdivision. We have the power. What other planning considerations are we thinking of that you want to discuss?
It seems all good to me. Seems like it's been vetted and they've done a lot of work. Just a curiosity question. I don't want to be more than like a couple of minutes. There's a private road on the back side of that property. If I assume it would just have to be agreement between the two private landowners, but if they ever wanted to, or not in this case, one like this, you can connect up two private roads if the two ownership groups have an agreement like that?
Yes.
You're talking about that hammerhead potentially going through?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, the city could have required that. They don't meet up. But had
Oh,
they,
so we could require that.
had there been a reason to require the meetup, I think had there been more lots, in this case, you know, it's a single family kind of thing, but had there been a reason to require that, you're looking at where 100 East continues through.
Yeah, correct. There's a private road that's on the back side of that fence on the east.
Yeah,
On
they
the
don't meet up.
Okay.
The 100 East is about basically the full distance on the other side. I'll just do a screen share here.
So, but in the case of like, there was more houses and there needed to be two means of egress.
There's condos in there.
Yeah.
And then egress for fire safety.
You could go and say, hey, you've got to connect to this. And the other people, do they have to allow access through that? I assume.
Oh, where the one private road is already established?
Yeah.
That might be a more difficult situation. What you can do is require the necessary access to a property, you know, which is, you know, at a certain level we need, if it's more than 20 units, then we need 2, and we have like cul-de-sac limits and things like that. And at that point, it's up to the developer to go get the proper access. We're not the ones forcing any other properties to participate, but we are saying at certain levels, if you need that second or third access, then it's on the duty of the developer to go get it.
So, yeah, so you're saying if we had more there and it did require that the two means of egress under the property and they couldn't come to an agreement with the existing property owner in that private road, then they just couldn't do the subdivision.
Yeah.
Okay. We couldn't force that from our side.
No.
Not that I'm saying we should, but I'm saying that's just a private agreement. Okay. Interesting.
However, if the private road may be somewhere in the previous agreement with it, there is an option to, you know, allow further connections or other things like that. Because if it had it done in recent history, then it would also have an agreement tied with it.
Okay.
Should we go on the next topic?
Let's move to general plan. That being said, we had some homework. I don't know if we wanted to follow up on that, but there were some specific topics that we were going to come prepared with that we wanted to prioritize as a planning commission as making recommendations. So that was part of our discussion. What else did we want to talk about with that? What were you thinking?
We do have a staff list that I can share now or later. And then and for the planning commission, you can discuss your own ideas and items.
I have my list.
Hey, I like it. And then also, you can give us feedback on what we have. I'll go ahead and pull up my screen here as to what we came up with. Ty, Teresa, myself met, had a great discussion, kind of brainstormed and talked about the general plan, what we see needs to be implemented. Ours is from a very practical standpoint. This is our list right here. Subdivision update. It's number one on there. Zoning designation, kind of creating a quick guide where you look at the general plan and what does that mean in terms of as we take it into zoning. Just kind of a supporting document, supporting guide. Then a land use classification table update, looking at, as the last year or two, we've talked about certain things that need to be updated with the land use classification, adding things, subtracting, combining, just cleaning that up. Also, a transportation master plan. UDOT did tell us they would assist us with the grant money, then it didn't happen. Now they have a change of personnel, so we're following up with them, trying to get that assistance on that. That'll be a deeper dive than what happened at the general plan. Particularly looking at our main freeway exit. Also, we want to try to get them to consider long-term, what does Morgan need or merit a second freeway in 20 or 30 years? A second freeway exit. That's why you do the transportation plan. I'm not saying it needs to happen or doesn't. That's why you do the plan. Update the landscape ordinance, specifically looking at manufacturing and commercial requirements there. And then what's already in the works is the downtown master plan, parks and trails. And then also coming with the downtown will be downtown ordinance as well. And also master plan community ordinance. So those are in the works. That's kind of our list. But we're, want to know what you all think, what's on your mind. And we don't have to, other than the subdivision, we can reorder some things. I think that's something that definitely needs to be done sooner rather than later. But, and we could also tack on other things as well. We don't have to completely be working on one project at a time.
What might be helpful is some of the thinking behind, so you have the zoning designation and were those in a specific order?
No, not necessarily. After the subdivision, anything else could be moved around.
So maybe just helping why the city wants to prioritize that. Each one, just to be helpful, kind of get a sense of what we're trying to accomplish. Because I've got, my list isn't as technical, just as an example. And it's similar to what I shared in our last meeting, but it might fall under, for example, the downtown ordinance. I'm still thinking building in mixed use and how that fits into the plan and how we write it up in the ordinance is still something that I have interest in. That may not be the right priority, but it might already be included in what you're talking about. So I just want a little bit more detail to see if some of these things are already accounted for. The other one that I was thinking of too is rethinking, because of the conversation we had last month, rethinking the historical overlay zone and maybe what the requirements are and how that plays into our planning. So those were a couple. I've got a couple others, but I want to hear more about these and understand how that fits in.
Mr. Chair, I could tell you, like the first three were part of my request. And those are basically, well, the subdivision, I've already been working with the engineer on that ordinance, but we kind of put off doing that until all the other big cities that were required to have it done already. Plus, as Gary said, every legislative session, they've made a few changes. And so we're hoping that they've dialed it down and we'll be able to get that going. But the zoning destination and the land use classification table is just help staff as applicant comes in, that we can fit whatever project they are wanting to do or use they want to do, using those two tools. And so having it match with the new general plan and the different densities and things, as we changed quite a bit of the master plan, is something that help with people who come in.
The land use table is a big cleanup effort, as I understand it.
Mhm.
Going
Yes.
through
Yes.
the details line by line of this use, this use, this use, and which zones that would be. But then the zoning designation, that's more for developers just to have, to make it easier to interpret the zones.
Yeah, and there'd be discussion and dialogue here, and then we would prepare something and bring it back to you. I don't know that it's not necessarily an adopted document, but maybe just a guide. Kind
That's
of,
gonna be my next question, is if that translated into the ordinance somehow.
I think it should help us with the ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
If you, I went ahead and put together some priorities. Two of them are on there, land use and transportation. And, I don't know how you prioritize these. There's so many different needs and wants, but I think transportation is a big one, because as the city grows, if you haven't noticed, it's getting much more cumbersome to get in and out of the city on certain times of the day. And, long range, we need another exit off of I-80, off the freeway somewhere. And another concern that I have as the city grows is water resources and all the power and sewer and everything that goes along with it. Is water an issue that we need to begin addressing like so many other cities are? As we grow, I know down in the south and St. George and places like that, it's really a big issue. I don't think it's a big issue here because we're not as big and we have some pretty good water resources. But as we continue to grow, that's a critical thing. Yeah, if you haven't got water, you have problems. And so those are two of the ones that I kind of have some priority for.
Okay. On transportation, for the time being, we're trying for that grant, the UDOT grant to fund that. And once we get that could kick off and happen at any time. So.
A real long range thing out there.
No, to do the transportation master plan, no. That's something we actually want to be doing within the next year. That's what we're working towards, getting that kicked off the next year. I actually had a long conversation with Ty on water. Lance can chime in, he knows it better than me. But it sounds like the city's in pretty good condition with water long-term. They've got the resources, the infrastructure, and they will need a bigger tank. You have 100,000 gallon tank and you want a 2 million gallon tank?
It was 2 million. Shoot.
Yeah.
We're jumping from 100,000 to 2 million.
Well, we have, that's like.
Gallons, not people, gallons.
No, I understand. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's a big jump.
And there are several tanks, you've got the one above Southbourne Cemetery, and then 3 over in North Morgan, so we already have. But I think 2 million gallons, if I remember right, was gonna put us at the capacity we would need for full build out when we were talking about for that grant, remember, Tony?
Yeah.
I think 2 million gallons would put us.
Went over to Southbury by the cemetery.
That's what bigger cities are doing. That's kind of the new suburban size.
Yeah,
That's 20 times our current capacity.
Yeah. Well, you're comparing one tank of many to one big one, so.
Okay, so we've got 4 100,000 gallons.
I don't know the size of all of them, but that's our typical tank.
Cemetery.
The idea would be to take those
The
offline.
one above the cemetery building, I think it was 2003 when we put
Yeah.
that tank in place. And it's 1 million or 1.5 million gallon
Yeah.
tank. It's the newest. We have one over in North Morgan that needs to be replaced
Yeah.
pretty soon. But yeah, so. But I might just mention, one thing when it comes to water, we do have, it's an interesting market. It's like two-pronged. The city has a lot of rights. we do have a lot of water rights. But if we went into a 10-year drought, it don't matter how many, it doesn't matter how many.
No.
Right, there's no water.
If there's no water, there's no water.
Right,
But we do have,
okay.
we have 1, 2, 3 wells. Let's see, Island Grove,
Island and Mahogany.
Mahogany. And then we have the springs over in Robinson Springs.
Robinson and, yeah,
Yeah,
I-
so I mean, yeah, the water's in it. But again, I can't predict if we're gonna have a 7 years of drought and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think Morgan's very fortunate in the fact that we're not in a real dire situation, but as we grow, that's something that has to be addressed, but it sounds like it's already been addressed and we're in pretty good shape. Before a subdivision is approved, do they have to have water rights on that property in order to have a new subdivision? They have to have some water right that they can access as part of that subdivision, is that correct?
Very surely required.
Yeah, secondary.
So let's, Justin has 2 comments and or questions, and then we need to wrap up and move to our general session. So if you want to do that quickly.
Well, to the recommendations there, I do want to say, it's exciting to see some things going on in the city, and I know there's a lot of hard work from some people in this room that are doing some great stuff. Are there, which of these align and can help? Not that we have to align with the county, but if there's already interest and an effort to do some of these things or realign these things with the county and city, I'd say that makes sense, because then you just got more momentum.
Mhm.
So I don't know which ones are already on the county side, like line up well.
With the trails, the county did the trails plan, and so
Right.
that's coming in.
Yes, I am aware, that's a great one. So I would say that's just a recommendation, is try to align, because it's already happening, and the more it aligns, I think the easier it is. The second thing is, it's great also to have all these ideas. You gotta have a way to fund it. And so the economic development side of things in the general plan, I would say, for me, I think that one's a fantastic one to work on and encourage those things, make sure ordinances and things are laid out in a way that encourages that kind of economic growth. So we have opportunity to do some of these things. So.
Cool. And that's one thing, bigger cities have whole departments for economic development and all that, and now it's Ty, Teresa, and Denise to talking, and you and others that are like bringing, things to town. And I don't know where does a small city go from here, but certainly on the planning standpoint, we can be business friendly. Meaning our ordinance are clear cut. We want to do good time tested things like having a robust downtown, mixed use housing there, and that kind of thing.
All right, anything else to add?
And of course we can.
We'll continue
Yeah.
some of this in the general session. So let's adjourn our work session and convene on the what do we call this, the rostrum?
You answer them just. Hey, Martin, anything there, do you want to sit here or you can?
Okay.
Good to see you.
Yeah. You can have it if you want. I don't know, I've never tried it.
I think you guys.
This is the dirty pepper.
I guess, I don't know. Yeah, coconut.
Yeah, coconut too.
Yeah. See. Probably give you guys. Yeah, but it's not cold. I mean, it's not like stuck in the snow. Go for it. That'll probably.
I generally get sick of that, but I'll let Jerry.
I contributed that to what I just settled on.
Gotta add some later. Well, you're a spectator. Wrong, Justin. You're going to real bad sounds. Before we start talking about it, door here. Yeah. Whatever. They really screwed up because when they tore it out, they took his whole manifold right away. Yeah. I have no idea. And they came over to repair it. And can't look at it. I just leave it. Cause they were doing it right. Yeah. I think they agreed to pay for it.
Sir, can you sit in the middle? Sit right in the middle.
How are you still on this?
You know,
You know what? I'll step down. Welcome to Joe Friday.
You know, you do like a motion and second it or something, and how'd it go?
Oh.
You would fit right in. Just take the mic away.
All right, good evening. Welcome to our May 21st Morgan City Planning Commission meeting. Welcome to all of you. If you haven't already, there is a sign-in sheet at the front to sign in. Please do so. Just a reminder, tonight's session will be live streamed via YouTube as well as recorded, so keep that in mind. And welcome to those joining virtually as well. My name is Nathan McClellan. I'm the chairperson of the Planning Commission, and I want to welcome all of you. Tonight, before we jump into our agenda, let's just review for one moment the minutes. This is from last month's session, April 15th, and we'd like to approve those if we have that alignment. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to look those over. If there's any edits or changes, let's recommend those now. Otherwise, I would call for a motion to approve those.
I move to approve the minutes.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
That is seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes as distributed? And I see you as well, Jay. Thank you. That's unanimous. We will move into our agenda in the order that it's outlined. There has been a change, just worth noting that the second agenda item has been removed from tonight's discussion. So we'll be taking agenda item number 1 first, and then we'll end with agenda item number 3. So we'll go ahead and move right into this. This is for the final discussion review of the Anderton subdivision located at 177 South State Street. And as we jump into this, for context and orientation, we know this has been a journey. We've had multiple conversations with these parties over the last, I don't know how long it's been, year and a half, 2 years. But we're glad that we're at this point. We can continue to take appropriate next steps as far as that path goes. Jake, would you mind introducing where we're at and taking us through this initially, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Jake Young, planner with the city. I just want to mention one item, the reason we removed that other item from the agenda is that the project, the Valley Vista was not quite meeting some of the basic requirements of street connections and some other things. And we don't want to bring forward a project to the planning commission that we don't think is meeting some of the basic requirements. So we gave the applicant the opportunity to, let's talk about it, get some things fixed and dialed in, and then bring it back. So that way you see a project that we can give you a recommendation on. Now, if we get to a point where applicant doesn't, agree with staff recommendations, that's fine too. And they can bring it forward, and then you can, review it and vote on it. But at that point, it wasn't ready.
Okay, that's helpful to understand. Thank you.
Okay, so this project is Anderton subdivision located at 177 South State. That's right on State Street, in the middle of the city. You'll notice it's kind of this elbow-shaped lot with most of the land being behind. Property is 2.77 or 2.57 acres. And current zoning is R18, which defaults to R110. And then the applicant is proposing a 3-lot subdivision. I bring this up right here so you can see that. So the existing home will remain, face State Street, and then the Anderton Lane, which is a private road, will come in on the south, curve around, and then access lots 2 and 3, which will face onto the private road. These lots are well in excess of the requirement. They do meet the frontage. The proposed use is residential, single family, so that conforms. And
Is the middle of the road the boundary line for the different lots?
uh,
Okay,
The road's actually gonna be dedicated as part of the plan,
okay,
so it'll be a private road, but ownership will be back to the homeowners.
thank you.
And on the property is an existing shed on lot 2. This is something we discussed before. It's legal, non-conforming. It's been there for a very long time, and as far as we know, evidence-wise, when it was built, it was legal in terms of the location, and therefore it's legal non-conforming and doesn't present any issues. And the applicant has stated that it's in good condition and poses no threat, and so that will remain. In terms of engineering review, also engineer gives its recommendation on it, and oh, that's the wrong report. I thought I had it up, but there's no significant issues from engineering. There will be some things that'll have to conform for the final construction docs and plat and all of that, but there's no issues from staff on engineering. Does meet the requirements, as I mentioned, for land uses, lot size, setbacks. Existing home is conforming, mentioned the existing shed. This drawing provided by the applicant just does show the approximate location of the proposed home. The home will come in at a second phase. If the plat is approved, then he would apply for a building permit. And so really, as the planning commission, you're not looking at the home, but it does kind of give an idea of how that works. It's not in the property is not in the sensitive lands, so there's no concern there. And it does access State Street, but the applicant has received approval and worked with UDOT on that. So we do have applicants here, Should we give them a
Yeah, I
chance
think it's a
to
great idea.
see if they have anything they want to add on the project and if the planning commission has any questions
Let's
for the
start with
applicant?
the applicant. If you want to share any additional details or information pertaining to this project.
No, our solution with the state for the access on State Street is not ideal and not of our liking. But other than doing nothing and not being able to develop the two homes back in the back, we're willing to put up with that.
What was the nature of the agreement?
What was that again?
What was the nature of the agreement with UDOT?
We were trying to use the road that goes back to the barn, the current road, and which is plenty wide. And you can see it right there on that drawing, the gravel road going back to the barn.
Mhm.
They came back and said that they would not allow a agricultural access to be turned into a residential access that close to our home's driveway. And our report back to them was, I mentioned before, we took pictures and sent them a map of the last 20 additions that have been made to State Street over the last, since we've moved here. And well, right across the street, the subdivision there, does not conform. The new road coming in and attaching to State Street. And neither do any of the other additions that have been made, the new one down into the apartments behind the Tractor Supply. That road does not comply with the distance they wanted. They want 150 feet in between our driveway and the road. And what they agreed to was to take the barn access road and curve it over into our front yard. It's on that drawing right there. And then we will have to take our driveway and curve it over into the road. And so we make a 30-foot joint access to State Street. You know, old people backing out of our driveway backwards and having to do a figure S to get out on the highway is, I think, ridiculous, but it's what they're requiring, and so we're okay.
Okay.
Question came up that on the drawing, and I assume that's your labeling on there, that it's Anderton Lane. The addresses are State Street addresses. Do we have the right on a private road to name our road?
That's a good question. Gary or Jake, do you have any insight on that?
I believe the answer is yes. Gary, is that correct?
That's correct.
Name the
Yeah.
private road.
So we do.
Yeah.
At what point do we do that?
Now.
Record the plat.
I mean, you don't have to tell us today, but before it's recorded.
Numbering on the lots themselves or on the houses for an address, would that be equivalent to them? Because this is a north-south, more or less road, could we keep, or do we keep the same number, but on the private lane name?
Yeah,
Or do we start a new numbering system, or?
I don't know. Lance?
Mr. Chair, we usually have,
Which is
Don't-
fine, we
yeah.
can do that.
what we have is Jones and Associates does have a mapping
Yeah,
Um,
that's,
engineer that's got all the addressing, et cetera. He just does that on approves, and so you work with
He
him.
basically told us to add addresses one on his red line back to us instead of giving us addresses.
Oh, that's so funny.
Anyway, so,
We'll check with Matt because it's not him, it's somebody in his office.
okay.
Well, we'll assume at this point that the number addresses are okay. And then all we need to do is name the street, and that would be the number on that street.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It will
Su-
probably be
submit-
called Sugar Street.
okay.
Sugar.
As long as there's not another Sugar Street in Morgan, then you're okay.
You got two dentists living on it, which is ironic, but Sugar comes from my mother's nickname.
Oh,
She was called Sugar, so this is Sugar Street.
you didn't want to do cavity.
Yes.
Like the
Submit what you want and then.
We will submit, you guys. will have
And
to
then
talk
it'll,
about it.
it'll have to be verified by the engineer that does the addressing.
That's probably my issue. I just wrote a name on there for the lane, so.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm glad you put something on there. We can,
You own it.
we own it,
You
right?
do.
I have a quick question. When it's a private lane like this, are there requirements about width and whether it's gravel or asphalt? There are requirements.
Yes,
And-
yeah,
and that's met all the requirements.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the maintenance agreement that'll take place, the engineering drawings in terms of the width, the material, all of that. You'll see right here, it's 26 feet, which meets fire. That's the.
But I think we had
magic number.
20
It has to be,
Has to be
asphalt. It can't be just gravel.
Right.
Right, okay.
Then, yeah, then there's that, kind of the hammerhead back there as your turnaround. And that had to meet the fire department requirements.
And we're now bringing the sewer off the back, off of 100 East and going towards the hammerhead. And then we'll cut off with two what do you call them? Lines? Laterals.
Yeah.
That will hook into a main. And there'll be a
Manhole right there.
manhole back on the hammerhead.
So, after reviews, staff recommends approval. The planning
Okay.
commission.
Yeah, thank you for reviewing that with us. Anything else that you wanted to add or share that we should consider?
I'm good. You have anything, Jared?
All right, let's take it up as a commission. What discussion items or questions do you have? Let's work through that and then we can take action on this particular application.
Go ahead and call for an action. You can always discuss the motion.
Okay, I like that recommendation. He wants to go home.
No,
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion if we're doing that.
Yeah, let's do that.
I motion that we approve the final plans for the Enterton subdivision at 177 South State Street.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, let's go ahead. If there's any discussion on the motion before we vote, now's the time. Seeing no discussion, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor? We've got ayes in the room. Jay, you're affirmative as well. The motion passes unanimously. Anderton subdivision is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next step,
2-year process, but thank you.
Already.
next step is just finalizing the drawings and getting that recorded and,
For the homes.
well,
For the-
They just
for
need
the
to sign
plat.
off.
Oh, okay, you're talking.
Yeah, they just need to be signed off by the engineering department
Yeah.
and planning and.
Yep, and then you can go ahead and as soon as that's approved, submit your building plans.
So there's no required meeting with like city council or anything then?
Nope.
This is the final done.
Yes, yeah.
Recorded.
Oh, I thought we had to go in next week to the city council.
We actually clarified it in the meeting before you got here. That-
time you would have.
I'm okay not to, good.
Now you can come back.
So these drawings that you're talking about for the infrastructure, water lines, road surface and everything else, they need to be approved before we contract with somebody to start.
Yes, yeah, you still need the city engineer approval on the construction drawings and
We need to
The plat,
get
yeah.
signed off, so.
Okay.
Any of the
It's
comments. that
more
they
of the
have are
details.
outstanding, We just need to make sure that we get, Jones.
And that's you and us
Yeah,
and Jones.
Yes,
Just get them to sign off and get us approval letter, and then the plat will have to go through and get signatures from the planning commission and from the engineer and from the attorney and all over, and then it gets recorded.
Then the
Okay.
county, and the county recorder's got to record it too.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric, Jeff and I discussed, we think it could be called Dentist Lane.
Dentist Lane,
Or Dental Lane.
Dental Lane. It's got a rhyme though. It's got a little ring to it or something.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our number 3 agenda item and last agenda item, which is really a continuation of our work session where we've been going through priorities for the general plan. So I think we can just pick up right where we left off, Jake, if that's okay.
Yeah, do that. And I do have the general plan pulled up here for reference. If we need it, go ahead, do a screen share, pull that up on the screen. So we have the general plan available. And then, as we discussed last month, the idea was, now that we have this new general plan, rather than it just sitting on the shelf, the digital shelf and collecting dust, let's go ahead and establish our priorities and start working on them. And well, one of the cool things is that we did a number of things during the general plan. It took a little longer than expected, but we updated we created the accessory dwelling unit ordinance and got that adopted, working with the city council. Also the mixed residential overlay, looking at the housing situation. That's something that also was adopted during the process, and some other small things.
Mr. Chair, so if we pick back up where, just sorry if I may, before I cut off there.
Yeah.
There was a question on like these things and, you know, how do you get them done? Because we really only have so much. You talk about economic development. The county, for example, has created the T-tab board, the A-tab board, the CEO board, all of these different committees that have a function. And some of them are, you know, by state statute and they have to be that way. Is there a way for us as we start to go down this list, if we are limited in any way with the manpower, woman power to get this stuff done, can we create a subcommittee? Like, is there a need for that to help move things along? Because it's great to have the plan, but if you have no way to execute it or get steps in, I know that's very frustrating.
Yeah, and I think absolutely. There's no reason why we couldn't do that. I mean, it'd be up to the planning commission, and obviously it'd be some extra hours on your part, but definitely. And we are gonna go after grants and assistance on anything that we can. With these ones already in the works, I mean, we have a full team of 3 full-time planners and Wasatch Front Regional Council and others working on those items. So, and then with the transportation master plan, we'd get a grant and hire a firm that specializes in that, to help us with that. But one of the advantages of a committee is that a smaller group, and it can't be a quorum, but as long as it's not a quorum, we could meet and review that. And so we can almost kind of prep things ahead of time. And then some of you are on our stakeholder committee for the downtown plan. Who, if you remind me who's on that? Let's take Lance and Aaron. So. Oh, okay. Is multiple hats. That's right. Yes. And we have more, a lot of things have actually been happening on that. You'll see at the end of this week or beginning of next, we have a survey. It'll go out for the public on trails, parks, questions on a rec center, downtown. What do people want to see? So that's going to be going out. Kind of exciting getting public input on those items.
So just to add then to your second page,
This one?
Yeah, and I don't know if we're putting tally marks next to something that gets multiple votes, but
However you want it.
it's your document. But we talked about this last time, Justin, and it really sparked a thought for me. And you'd mentioned the economic development component, but the part that stood out to me that we talked about before was proactive. This is intentionally going after opportunities. So I love that concept. And really the other things that I'd already mentioned tie into that they could be part of the downtown plan. I'm not sure what that committee's working through, but in my mind, trying to create that vibrancy and the vibrancy is enabled by mixed use, at least in my opinion. And so building that into our ordinances in a way that complements that outcome. That's one thing. The second thing for the vibrancy, and still it falls into the downtown area, is the pedestrian orientation. And so both of those things to me are part of what I want to ensure is enabled in what we write up. Similar to if we're trying to make it easy for developers to come in and have a zoning table and it's a quick reference guide and that's easy and the city's easy to work with. I think it's a great goal. Also want to make sure that the things that are easy to develop accomplish some of these other goals, that the community's growing in the right ways, economic development's happening. We're seeing that vibrancy take place, more pedestrian traffic, more people living, playing, eating downtown as opposed to a bedroom community where we all go to Ogden to do anything. So that was that. And then the third one I mentioned was the historical overlay rewrite.
Okay. A couple comments on that. As part of the downtown plan, we are looking at State Street, and pedestrian safety is a big concern on State Street. So that's something we'll be looking at. I like your idea. Let's not just, we've got check mark items, updates, but also values, pedestrian friendly, mixed use, economic vibrancy, those kind of things. So, those are, let's always keep those intertwined. With the subdivision ordinance that we're going to be doing, I want to see if we can't, we'll do what we have to meet state requirements, but we can also add into that some requirements for street and pedestrian connectivity. So that it's right now how it works is someone comes in to propose and we kind of use our staff strong arm. We actually happened this today with a subdivision. We said, well, we need additional street connections for adjacent properties, things like that. And they work with us. But I would like it to be a little bit more clear cut, meaning it's obvious in the subdivision ordinance how many street connections do they need per size of property. And also on the pedestrian, it might just be a request. If it's a pedestrian besides this, a trail connection.
Well, and even beyond trails, it's something as simple as looking at our sidewalks. So sidewalk width of 4 feet versus a sidewalk width of 5 feet is a very different pedestrian experience. And so things like that, I think we can build into our ordinances and think about. It doesn't have to be an elaborate trail system that we're designing. It can be some simple things too.
Why not?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But.
Yeah.
to confirm that, I mean, just the connection of the Riverwalk Trail to come around and connect back into Commercial Street.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fantastic. It's not a long distance to do that, but as a person who makes that walk, like that's very welcome. It's a welcome sight to see, to have that there. And honestly, it just promotes way more people to do it. The experience is better. So 100% on board with what the chair said.
Yeah, I walked that 2 days ago and there were a lot of people on that new portion coming from Front Street up over the bridge and around it. And it's great. I mean, it's really neat to have that there.
Cool. It's good.
I have one question on economic development. Does that include the industrial park?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if that was a separate entity or economic
Yeah.
development includes that.
Yes, economic development could be, you know, anything that grows business in the city. The downtown plan in the works does not include the industrial area. We're looking at it because we're looking at master plan community area and we're looking at downtown. Obviously, it's in between, but it's not the
So
focal
what
point.
qualifies in State Street, Commercial Street? What about, between the park and the bowling alley? What's that street?
I'll show you right here. I'll pull up my map while we're talking.
Right there,
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
that one.
Oh, that one. I think it is in that area. too.
Trojan Boulevard.
And the owner of that property is actually looking at making a change. Apparently, the bowling alley is not very profitable. Either you guys need to get really into bowling or something else.
We bought bowling shoes.
Oh, okay. That's, okay, so this is the downtown right here. You see this in the purple area. This is their study area.
Okay, so it does include,
Actually, this is the bowling alley right here,
it does
right?
not include, okay.
We could actually add it. It's not a big, this is not a formal thing. I'll talk to Ty. I don't see a reason not to I think the thing was we didn't necessarily include 250 because there's no anticipated change on 250. But
Well, I'm wondering if it,
What?
go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, anticipated change as far as what?
well, this is like, that's the focus. That's the downtown plan study area. Yeah. Some fun things that came out of the workshops that I think will be floated by is some commercial on the river. You know, if there was a way to get any restaurants or right there on, I think particularly need to be close to State Street just for the business component, but having some restaurants that back up against the river. You've been to there's a couple in Logan that back up to the river that are really nice. Sit out there in the summertime under the shade and next to the river.
Even on
I could see
12th
those.
Street in Ogden where the old Slackwater used to be. Looking out over the Ogden River on the patio out there.
Well, to go with that, I mean, it's to invite that is to make sure that the ordinances are done in a way that, you know, is there the flood zone area, the,
Oh, there you go, a flood zone.
yeah.
Unless you know something I don't, you can't build a flood zone. We can dream about restaurants hanging on the river all we want.
Just build it on stilts.
If you raise it up, you can. They have to work through a process.
And what are that's always confused me. You know, obviously you don't want to have your project be flooded and endanger people and property, but I've been to way too many places in the world and seen engineering marvels. I don't understand why we can't build next to a river. I mean, we put tunnels through oceans and you know, we've got buildings out on water and with basements, literally. I
Yeah.
don't understand why, like, what is it that we don't know that other engineers around the world know?
You just have to go through the process. You know, this project went through the process of raising up the elevation. It's all about the elevation and the level of the water. And, you know, there's hydraulic studies that happen and you have to essentially remove it from the FEMA floodplain by raising it up.
That's one piece.
Yeah.
The other piece is you can't impede on the flooding going further into somebody else's property. So by building that.
You can't divert it.
You then create a situation where you cause a flood to go further into other properties. The way I understand it now. I could be wrong.
That's true. And I think that's part of
Yeah, both those pieces.
yeah. And then also like, how close is it to the actual channel? You know, is it at a certain point, is that channel going to be cutting in and jumping bank and all that. I mean, but that's for the Army Corps of Engineers, the FEMA flood maps, city engineer. I mean, it's a complex process and it's not cheap. But you know, you could always, there's always decks and things like that. You know, the restaurant that closed down, the Oaks, that was in the Ogden Canyon. Of course, that's been around a long time, but that idea that the main structure is farther out and then it's more patio space, deck, you know, that's something that's a lot easier to put out in that floodplain because it's a low risk compared to a building structure or parking.
I had a beautiful view of the river the other day when I was having my dental work done.
I told you, didn't I?
Yeah. Where's that at?
Yeah.
It's in the high school park.
Right here?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah, okay.
dental office. The chairs look right out at the river.
Oh, that's cool.
Beautiful, best view in town.
That's awesome.
Of course,
Put a restaurant there.
it could be the Laughing Gas too.
Yeah.
It's free. Okay, going back to our discussion, other things that the planning committee, and with the historic overlay, I think the thought there is downtown plan and then the downtown ordinance update, and then we see where the historic overlay matches on that. And the historic overlay could also just basically be interwoven into the downtown plan as a subcomponent of it. You know, we're balancing this. We want it to feel historic, look historic, yet allow for growth and legal property rights, all within a constrained area of a one-sided downtown.
May I ask a question on the downtown behind Commercial Street? I know there was a project. Did I hear that there's a potential change there? I know we had it presented to us. Yeah, the alleyway.
Oh, the alleyway. Yes.
No, behind Commercial Street, coming from the hotel, behind Commercial Street there, you know,
Behind the trailer.
tied. The reason I bring it up, because that's one that I know has been planned and it would go, and that would obviously be a great one for economic development and
official?
walkability.
No.
My,
No. It's in the works.
It's in the works.
so the reason I asked the question, is there anything that we can do in this that would help with a project like that? Because obviously that does check a lot of the boxes in a historic district. It's improves, you know, more businesses, it's walkability, all of this stuff, like everything we're talking about fits in that. Is there anything that we could do or focus on or discuss that would help that along?
I don't know at this point, but let's ask Ty and see if we can bring that. Yeah, as soon as the city owns the land, which is in the works.
We have grant money to do that type of project. And it's got all this timing. And then once the timing's done and everything's in place, then we'll be at, you know, planning. Obviously, you're already planning some of that.
It's gonna be great, though. It's gonna be a big improvement.
Yeah, and there is some, you know, applications that you, planning commission don't see because they're permitted uses. So it's not that nothing's happened in the city. We've got a few projects going in industrial area. Couple more subdivisions.
I am curious though, back on that downtown map that you were showing.
Yep.
I do like the idea of including the bowling alley area.
Okay.
I don't know if that means,
And I'm not sure why we didn't in the first place.
I'll ask Ty and see what he thinks.
Well, currently sorry, are you done?
No, go ahead.
So when we talk about the historic overlay downtown area, it's commercial central area, which is more limited on what type of uses. We expanded onto to Commercial Street just because of the proximity to, you know, the main entrance of the city. Where the bowling alley is a commercial general, which allows more uses even than a commercial central. So I'm thinking that's maybe why we didn't.
Well, and other than the bowling alley property, you know, these apartments are relatively new. You know, it's basically just one piece in between, and whatever recommendations we would make for 125 would be applicable to the bowling alley, and certainly mixed use is being proposed and discussed in this area in a general
Yeah,
concept.
I guess that's the question, because those relatively new apartments at one point, that was commercial, and that wasn't, you know, that was we made the changes so that could happen. And that whole street, that 125 was intended years ago to evolve, I would say, towards more commercial, and just hasn't happened. And instead it's evolved more towards residential. And I don't know, is that something if the bowling alley area, I'm talking about that complex there, because there's about 3 different haircut businesses that operate there and the drink shop that's there. If that's intended to continue to persist, and you know, or do we see it as a continuation of the apartments, because the same owner owns that whole thing? So, and that's something I just want to understand as a city, is that the direction that we would be in?
The owners actually talked about a mixed use project on it.
Okay.
I don't know how serious they are, but they have talked about it.
So does the same owner own the vacant lot on the other side of the bowling alley, you know?
That I don't know.
I can tell you, the empty lot where they're parking stuff,
Uh-huh,
yeah, it was the same group,
okay.
I knew the previous owner.
And is that currently zoned commercial?
So that's JMS property, JMS.
I can tell you
Yeah.
that there was discussions when it was purchased, that would be the expansion area for the bowling alley, even into theaters.
Yeah,
Did not
all right.
so far happen.
So there's obviously maybe some pressure with, these are twin homes. No, this is
With River Cove.
55 up, okay. Okay.
I guess part of, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I guess part of me still wants to preserve that commercial aspect of that area across from the park. I think that serves the city to have some commercial interest right there that's walkable, and that to me is aligned with some of the things that I've been talking about.
Okay.
The concern would be if we give that up and then it becomes completely residential. Mixed use meets the vision for me, so that's okay, but that's all. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I agree with that, because something's gonna go there, and we would want that to be, I think, commercial mixed use is great. With the boundary stopping before the river, right there on State Street. I
Yeah.
mean,
In this case, it went across the river.
yeah, right there. You know, and this is just for me in my mind. So when I think downtown Morgan, it's State Street is downtown, right? Like all State Street is downtown, and the majority of the businesses are along State Street. Commercial Street, I know we've tried to do that there, but this goes into where, is there a benefit for that designation to keep coming down State Street? You obviously have some historical, I mean, Old Larry's, Nepco is historic, right?
Yeah, I think part of this process is a unique vision for Commercial Street and its surrounding area, a separate unique vision for State Street and its kind of adjacent properties, and then a supporting role on 125. And whatever is decided for state can continue the whole state corridor. So zoning ordinance updates, other, recommendations, things like that.
But if I understand correctly, there are certain monies, grants available in the historic district, RDA money that's not available down State Street.
Definitely, so for RDA, it has to be within the specific
Mhm.
RDA
Right.
district. So, that's a solid boundary.
Well, what is it? I don't even know, honestly, how it's all defined.
Redevelopment agency
But
and, now they're called community reinvestment areas. They were economic development areas, so we're on the third name. But when it was established, it was an RDA. And essentially that is, we'll take a portion of, if the city would approve a project under the RDA, take a portion of the money that would go to the schools and other tax entities, and you put that money in the RDA, and then that money goes towards to help a project. So, and then in return, the taxing entities will get the economic development later. I don't know that Morgan has done a whole lot last decade. A lot on that? Okay, sorry.
I've done a lot, and
Okay.
actually the RDA had expired, and then we went ahead and redid the new RDA. Gary probably knows more than what I'm saying, and the area it's changed a little bit, hasn't it, Gary?
You're on mute. If you don't mind.
That's so you don't have to listen to the jets. Although it's the most beautiful sound in the world, but anyway. Yes, it expanded a little bit, but we just renewed the RDA with the same budget and particulars that it had so that we could renew it under the prior system. But I don't know if we have been collecting. You're talking about the residential portion, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we've got any money in. I don't know what we're doing with that. With that residential portion, but I'm sure Ty could answer that question.
It's all going back to like, what are we incentivizing and what do we want to see? And if we have the ability to draw the boundary over another area that gives people more incentive to carry out what we want to do, then let's do that. That's all I'm saying is,
Yeah.
why is it just an arbitrary line in some cases? And do we have that ability to influence that? If it doesn't matter, fine. But if it does matter, then that's what I'm saying we should look at. And if that's even in our purview or needs to be the city council.
Well, I think on those items, if it's for an RDA boundary or then you'd make the recommendation, that would be the city council. And historic overlay or historic areas, then we'd have to work with like the National Historic Society if we want to change those boundaries.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
and you're like, no, we don't want,
We're not gonna.
we don't want to
Just
go there.
because they had very specific criteria for what qualified and what didn't.
Sorry, I don't mean to change the subject, but I did hear, just wanted to clarify if it's a rumor or not, but I had heard that there is some potential of us losing, if there, a number of buildings on Commercial Street don't adhere to the historic standards, that we can lose that designation.
We could at some point if they come back and reevaluate, yeah.
And also knowing if this is true or not, but I even understand one of our signage approvals may have actually affected that. And I think that was completely unknown to us that had that.
I hadn't heard that.
Specifically a restaurant over there that has a more non-historic looking.
That shouldn't affect the actual integrity of the building itself, if it's a removable sign.
Not the integrity, the look or what this was a comment made by the Historic Society in a separate meeting. And some concerns that may or may not have an impact, but.
I would doubt it, but I'm not an expert, but I understand there's concerns nonetheless. But yeah, we do need to keep that in mind as, of course, they're private buildings, right? People can choose to modify them as they want.
Yeah, the city is keeping that in mind though. We're working on some concepts for the entries, a new sign coming into the city. And that'll say historic Morgan for those specific requirements.
did we want to compile any other ideas that members of the commission had? Just to get them on your list. We may not discuss them all right now, but we can at least have them on the list.
Hey, if I can just add, as I kind of read down through this and looked at this. Obviously for me, priorities are transportation and studies and the parks and trails. A lot of that housing overlays, bonus densities and, future land use. I think as we look, I think my priority really would come down to, part of it's because as staff, Teresa and Jake and I, we get to see some things that never actually make it to this body, and propose things and get to be in on some of those discussions. And as I kind of look at that future development, some which may never even come out into the public eye, I think some of the things we need to get working on first, and we're going to approve or work through or modify is things that if we put off and we get 2 or 3, 4 new subdivisions come through, that we miss our chance to get the benefit in these new subdivisions or areas. I mean, a lot of the stuff is going to kind of take care of itself in older areas. We're going to continue going after grant money. We're going to make those trail connections and sidewalk connections. But I think some of the stuff, anything that could quickly become a missed opportunity, if that makes sense, I think should kind of be up there a little bit on the list through, if that makes sense, through new development. Because once it comes in and they apply and it's official and this is what they're doing, that the ordinances or standards we have are what they're bound to. And a lot of good ideas may be potentially lost, and things that we can try and make these developments better as they go through. So I think anything that could become a missed opportunity would probably be pretty high on my priorities, and that has a lot of different things that it looks like,
Yeah, how would we recognize those missed opportunities?
Well, I think, is there part of this, is there something we want to see different for, the trail systems in a new subdivision over a certain size? Some of the, like I say, I don't even really know what that looks like. But as we think about it, what are the things that could be a missed opportunity rather quickly as development comes?
Yeah, I think with the subdivision ordinance, just getting the straight connectivity, that could be a missed opportunity.
Yes.
In terms of some of these bells and whistles that we might want with development, like parks or trails, we can only get those through an overlay zone or a development agreement.
Yeah, and that was on my kind of list of things, the overlay zones and future housing and land use.
So, I mean, we've already started that with the MRO. If we want to more incentivize development, meaning if you want to just come in, give us a standard subdivision, you can do that. And we're not going to ask for any more. But if you're willing to maybe do some parks and trails, then the city is willing to give you some additional housing, like the MRO. And I think that's kind of the idea of the master plan community as well.
So I like where you're going with this, though. I think it makes a ton of sense, but I like Aaron's question of trying to understand how can we be proactive in designing some of this so that we are preempting it. An example for me, and I know not everyone agrees, that's the beauty of being part of these things, but that central block in Morgan behind Napa where the NICE project went in, there's also the Kimball home back there. To me, and those uses are now in place. To me, that was a missed opportunity. That is was some of the premier area within the city that was undeveloped. It was a large parcels and an opportunity to maybe do something differently. Now, it is what it is at this point, but in my mind, I'd like to, if there's 3 or 4 others of those in the city that we could continue to think about differently. And so that when development comes in, it doesn't undermine maybe that idea. The problem is your idea might be different than my idea, than Justin's idea, because everybody probably has their own vision. So how do we keep those missed opportunities in mind?
Yeah, and that's it. I wished I could be more specific. I just, in my time with the city, I've looked and thought, man, if we had only known now 5 years ago what we know now. And so it is kind of a guessing game on what all of our future visions for this city are, and just making sure that, you know, we don't miss that trail connection and we don't do some of that, you know, and trying, I look at different areas and I wish we could go back in time, and I look at a future connection from 400 on the Island Road to 525 on Young Street. We've got extra right of way width there. I think how great would that have been to maybe narrow the roadway up just a little bit and have a trail on one side of it instead of a sidewalk that would tie all the way through there. Just little stuff like that, some of the design elements. And like I say, this is where Jake is far more experienced, and I'm kind of looking at it as the lower level here. But I look at some of those connections, and I guess that's what I have in mind with.
Well, but
Some of
theoretically,
theirs.
that is one of the big advantages of the general plan, right? That we kind of map out what we would like the city to look like going forward. So if we go back to where we started and we work our ordinances so that they're consistent with the general plan as well as compliant with state mandates, then we should be able to kind of help it grow into the vision.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes, and I apologize. It's been a brutal few weeks with projects this year, so we're lucky I can even make a sentence at this point. So
There's been a few.
Ray?
Only thing I had on my list, if I may, that hasn't been already mentioned was just, and maybe this goes without saying, I would love to see an annual report on the status of the general plan and how the process of implementation is going and what modifications do we need to make per state mandates, things like that.
Great, thank you. Lance, did you have anything else on your list?
no, I mean, we've.
What if I put that in for like January,
it all.
February, kind of beginning of the year?
Every year.
Oh, but December. Oh, yeah, that's probably a good time as legislative because,
Always is.
well, yeah, we're given a new. March, April.
Maybe we can show, you know, how they do those quick overview and they do videos and that.
Yeah, we get, what did we accomplish last year? What happened in the session? And then what should we be working on for the next year?
That'd be really helpful.
They have through the league and through the Land Use Institute, they'll do these little webinars with legislative update, and they're available to the public. You just have to go on their website and look at them and stuff because they record all of it. They're really good to say what happened. And sometimes after what happened, even Gary will tell you he's not sure what happened. But they're really good. They give you kind of a layman's term of legislature.
I keep thinking about getting bridges and connections over there, but Ray, it looked like you wanted to say something. Is that?
I was gonna say the trick to these missed opportunities or that was a waste to put that project there. The trick to that is for somebody, mainly this group, to identify what those are and were, and write those in the ordinances. In most cases, those two things were done according to what the current ordinance was. So now we look back and say, oh, I wish that happened, this happened. So the thing to do is look at those things in your mind that you think were missed opportunities, which I don't disagree with that part. Next piece is then bring those up, and we need to incorporate those in the ordinance.
It's true. The ordinance is what we can require. from development.
For example, if a developer comes in, the ordinance says you may put in 10 apartment buildings in this area. He comes in and does that. We wish we can't do this and this and this. We can't make him do that unless it's in the ordinance.
And it's legal.
And it's legal, yeah, right. You have to, we'll include those in the ordinance that are appropriate to do.
Yes. Some of the things that we require in the MRO, we could not do if it were in the base zoning. So it's kind of a nice balance of offering an incentive, but also asking for some open space and design requirements. So. Anything else? I'll save this and I'll go in the minutes and give this to Teresa. We can send it back out to everybody so you can have that from today's meeting. And thank you. So I think what we'll do is if you don't mind, I could be on the city council agenda and just kind of pass along what we discussed and where we landed, so they know what the planning commission is thinking, and if they want to pass anything back down, we can do that via email or next month.
So, the 28th city council's cancel, right? And so it'd be June 11th,
Okay,
if you're available.
I think so.
Okay, is that anything else that you were thinking of for the general plan for tonight?
No. But we will proceed with the subdivision ordinance.
Yes.
That's when we want to get moving on. So next month, I'll bring what are the requirements of the general of a subdivision ordinance. I don't know if we'll have a draft ready or not. If we don't have one in June, then we'll have one in July. But I can go over what are the state requirements so that you're familiar with that. And then we could also talk a little bit about what does a street connectivity look like. One thing this can be the closing, my closing item is if you do just a Google for WFRC Street Connectivity Guide, it's a great document that was done a few years that I've used as a resource, but this guide kind of gives cities. There's a lot of appendices and research and all that. There's only 20 pages or so that matter, but if you're just curious, if you love this stuff as much as I do, yeah, but anyways, it's a good resource on that. And really it matters because those streets stay forever. Development happens and things, sure, they change once in a while, but streets that have been in New York or Rome, 300-400 years ago, they're still there. And places where we wish we had that connection are not always there. And that's the way you become more walking friendly. It's great for snow plowing, trash, utilities, as things expand. Everybody loves to live on the end of the cul-de-sac, but at some point, I look at a city more like a grid system than a river. A river tributary into the one river, and then they keep going. That doesn't work in terms of having a network that gives you options and going all different places, and also that safety gets a little bit better rather than just pushing everybody onto a bigger street.
Yeah, it looks like a little bit of light reading. Mark's gonna report back.
All 234 pages.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
Okay, Teresa was right. There's a lot of good information on the Utah League of Cities and Towns website. Under advocacy and then under land use, there's a really good summary and a seminar on what happened this last year. And there's also one that what happened in 2023. And Jake was right. We have until December, I think December 1st to actually bring about all the changes that SB 174 back in 2023 imposed on us and that they corrected a little bit this year. So we've got some time, but it would be good to get started.
That sounds good. Well, I think we've got a starting point then, and we've got some good insight. We'll see what you come back with next month, Jake, but appreciate it. Any final thoughts from the commission before we wrap up? Well, thank you all. We'll do this again next month, and this meeting is adjourned.